Alright, hello there, world history people. Let's keep learning about what was going on in World War II. So I filled you in with most of the things going on in Europe, but now let's talk about this country. What was happening in the United States? Well, in the 1930s, America was still struggling under the Great Depression. And the general feeling in the United States was that our participation in World War I wasn't necessary. We thought it was kind of a mistake. We sent a lot of guys to die in the trenches when the war was about to end anyway. So really, the people of America wanted to just ignore what was happening in the rest of the world. And this concept is called pacifism. We wanted to just leave the problems of Europe, Asia, Africa, the Pacific Ocean to that side of the world and stay on our side of the world in peace. And in fact, I've got here a Gallup poll in 1940 asked, should America join World War II? 95% of Americans said no. We had our own problems to deal with, didn't want to help the rest of the world. Okay, so let's look at some of these pictures here. Here's a bunch of guys in a soup line in the Great Depression. Here's a Dr. Seuss article, America First, reading a book called Adolf the Wolf. It's like we don't really care about what's going on in Europe. We know Adolf's a bad guy, but it's like a fairy tale. It's on the other side of the world. And here's a lady worried about the Depression, and here's a guy who doesn't have a job. Why does he want to help people fight in war? Well, our president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, saw kind of a solution, okay? He really didn't like the Japanese or the Germans. He saw that fascism was bad, and he knew that Americans needed jobs. So what he decided to do was he said, hey, America, let's start building war material to help out these countries that are fighting against fascism. And the idea was, Britain and the Soviet Union later, they're like so strapped for cash. They're on their last legs fighting. Franklin Roosevelt said, we'll just lend you all this stuff and you'll pay us back later. So that's their idea. And throughout World War II, there's going to be a whole lot of vehicles and guns and weapons that the British and the Soviet Union will use, but it'll all say made in the USA. So he's starting to build up our economy again. There's Franklin Roosevelt. We must be the arsenal for democracy. Yep, and an arsenal is a place where you keep your guns. So that's the idea here. Here's a bunch of American women building airplanes, American-made Jeeps, and here's Soviet guys driving in American vehicles. Okay, and I already mentioned this, I think, in my first video, but Franklin Roosevelt decided to stop trading oil to Japan. We saw all that evil stuff they were doing in China, and the Japanese, they really thought they could try to woo us over and regain our oil trade. The Japanese really tried to hide all the evil things that were happening in China, and the Japanese ambassador to the United States really wanted to keep a open, friendly trade relationship with the United States, but he didn't want to stop all the evil things Japan was doing in China, though. So the Japanese decided to gift America the now famous cherry blossom trees in Washington, D.C. They are all still there in D.C. today, even in the year 2021. And I think I've heard this might be the largest cherry blossom grove in the world today. And a lot of people go there and they're like, wow, this is really beautiful. But if you look at where did we get all these cherry blossom trees? Well, the Japanese tried to bribe them to us. They also built Japanese friendship gardens in several cities along the West Coast, including San Diego. That friendship garden I'm quite familiar with, and here's a picture of the original friendship garden. But it's interesting to see that the Japanese are literally bribing us with flowers in order to get what they want from us. So here's Hideki Tojo. This is his plan to woo America with beautiful friendship gardens like that one and the cherry blossom grove in DC. And the Nazis and the Japanese, they really viewed America as this racially impure country that was too busy fighting amongst itself with its own racial problems to be considered a real threat. I remember reading something the Japanese said, well, America's more likely to have Civil War Part 2 than to actually participate in World War II. And they assumed that our country couldn't unite together in any effective way because of all the racism and other problems here. In fact, there was this big thing in Los Angeles during this time period called the Zoot Suit riots, where white people and Latinos got in this big street brawl and a bunch of Latino guys got killed. And they're like, oh, see, look, they can't get along. How are they a real threat? Okay, and also during this time period, the Ku Klux Klan was a big deal. Here's some racist white kid. Here's, America, or Uncle Sam the Klansman. This is a racist sign at a restaurant in Dallas. Here's the Zoot Suit riots. More racist signs around the United States. And those are Zoot Suits. I think they look super cool. Bring them back. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so once we declined Japan's offer to continue trading with them and said, hey, as long as you're invading China, we will not trade any oil with you. The Japanese decide that's the last straw, so they decide to attack us. The Japanese say, well, what is the weakest point in America's defenses? And they figure out that just about our entire Navy is hanging out in the naval base at Pearl Harbor. So Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese fleet prepares a surprise attack to destroy the American naval base and all of our ships at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. But even while he's planning this attack, it's kind of interesting. Yamamoto recognizes that Japan probably won't win this war. He only plans the attack because he's ordered to, and he believes that the emperor is a god, and maybe somehow the emperor will give people divine power to win. But he's a realist, and I got some Yamamoto quotes right here that tell you what he really thinks about the United States. So here's the Japanese fleet that launches the attack on Pearl Harbor. I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant and given him a terrible resolve. And that is very true. And you cannot invade the mainland United States. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass. Wow, it's a pretty incredible quote. Yeah, so don't attack America. We got guns here. Okay? And so on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese do destroy every single American battleship. They kill 2,400 Americans while only losing 60 Japanese sailors. It is the third deadliest non-wartime day for Americans in our history. A huge problem for us was, we had all these ships in Pearl Harbor, and in order to keep the ships more kind of stable in the harbor, we actually tied them all together like this. And we made them really easy targets for the Japanese to bomb from the sky. And also, when one of these ships blew up, it kind of was a domino effect, and all of our ships blew up. So we made a lot of mistakes that day, and the Japanese totally exploited it and killed so many of our sailors. So rude, Japan. So rude. All right, so I already showed you this picture. Here's Japan. This is kind of their extent of their control during World War II. And not only did they hit us at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, they do these surprise attacks all over Asia. And they immediately start attacking all these other countries. So remember Pearl Harbor. Still get salty about it. Here's Japan blowing up our ships. And there they are giving us this peace flower with one hand, while at the same time stabbing us in the back. Rude. Rude. Okay, FDR gets pissed, America gets pissed, my grandfather gets pissed. On December 8th, America joins the war, and now the world is truly at war. Hitler, Mussolini, and Japan, they join up, they become the Axis powers. America joins Britain and the Soviet Union, and they become the Allies. Okay, I've also got another Hitler quote here. So as soon as the Nazis officially start fighting the United States, this is what Hitler said. The United States is a country devoid of culture, devoid of music, above all, a country without soldiers, a people who will never be able to decide the war. When has a nation like that ever become a race of fighters? I estimate the earliest the Americans will be able to land a significant force in Europe is 1970. What? We're going to get a force in Europe in 1944. So we're coming for you, Hitler. It ain't gonna work out. Okay, so yep, Axis and Allies. The world is at war. And United Nations fighting for freedom. All these countries join up to join the Allies. And then here's the Axis, and it's Italy, Nazis, and the Japanese. Okay, so Japan did have some superior technology at the start of the war. The Zero fighter plane was the fastest plane in the world. I showed you guys a clip from that Miyazaki film, The Wind Rises. That guy designs this really fast airplane, and these planes were just flying circles around America's planes at the beginning of the war. We couldn't really fight against them very well. Also, Japan had the largest ship in the world, the Akagi supercarrier. It could hold something like 300 airplanes. This is one of the ships that attacked us at Pearl Harbor. So these are some real scary threats to the United States during World War II. And yep, they're shooting down American planes. Okay, so yep, and I already implied this in one of my previous pictures, but Japan launches surprise attacks at Pearl Harbor and all over Asia. Japan quickly takes over Hong Kong, Vietnam, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, all in a matter of weeks, kind of doing the same blitzkrieg thing the Nazis were doing. And at this point in history, the Nazis, the Japanese, the Italians, they call each other up, and this is before the Battle of Stalingrad, mind you. So the Nazis think they're on a winning streak, and they say, you know what, we're going to keep fighting until we take over the whole dang world. All right, they created this map where they were going to split the world up into a couple different zones, and this whole zone would be Japanese, and this whole zone would be Nazi-controlled. So if you look, their plan was to divide the United States kind of in half, but the entire western United States would be in Japan's influence. So if we had lost World War II, y'all would be learning Japanese today. America only had a small fleet of aircraft carriers left to prevent the Japanese from attacking. And if you had asked me to kind of evaluate militarily who has the better chance of winning World War II, well, on January 1st, 1942, I would have put my money on the Axis powers. I mean, they were just only winning up until that point. And the Japanese, by this time, had effectively conquered the entire Philippines. There was a bunch of American soldiers there who put up a defense, but they all surrendered. And the Japanese ended up killing many American soldiers there as well. So a lot of gruesome stuff happening in the world. All right, here they are raising the Rising Sun flag all over Asia. This is the Battle of San Francisco. Thankfully, this never happened. This is not a real historical event. This is an imagined event. Here's a Japanese guy hurting an American dude. Here's that global map. I'm so glad this didn't happen. But this is from this is the vision of the Nazis taking over New York. And then this is some of that stuff they're saying. They're like, Japan is coming to get you. And yep, Japan's soldiers American soldiers surrender to the Japanese, and Bataan totally occupied by the Japanese. Okay, so is America going to take all this lying down? Absolutely not. The American people, we decide to put aside all of our racial problems, and we get in 100% total war very, very quickly. We're going to create the best total war economy in the history of the world. Everyone in the United States gets a production job, and we become a giant country of super factories set on one mission, defeating the Axis powers. So let's check some of this out. Okay, here's a bunch of American women building more and more airplanes. Here's people of different racial backgrounds getting along, all working together to fight the Nazis. And here's a young girl learning how to weld stuff for the war. That's awesome. Okay, so Rosie the Riveter, she is the symbol of working women in the United States. I've got this poster in my classroom, and there's some pretty incredible things that we did during World War II as a country. We employed everybody we could, and we encouraged everyone in the United States to use our creative energy and power to produce war material as quickly as possible. Here's the Stockton shipyards in California, where we made these ships called Liberty ships. And these ships were just kind of like ways we could transport goods all around the world, send help to the Soviet Union, send help to the British as they fight fascism. Originally, it took us 365 days to build one of these ships. And through American engineering and ingenuity, we came up with these new strategies like, okay, instead of using regular paint, we'll use quick dry paint. And instead of building 4 decks in the ship, we'll only build 2 really big decks. And instead of using like so many rivets to build the ship, instead of using 10 rivets, we'll only use 6 rivets. And we found that it just got better and better and better, and we could build these ships faster and faster and faster. And we kind of did the same thing at the factory in Willow Run. Willow Run is in modern-day Washington State, And that's where we made a bunch of airplanes that we used to bomb the Nazis and the Japanese. Originally, it took us 30 days to build one of these airplanes, but at Willow Run, we designed this super factory system where people were just pushing the planes down, doing it really quickly, really efficiently. We had all the material needed to make the planes, so it's just a matter of assembling them together. And we were able to make those planes ridiculously fast as well. And I'll tell you the answers on the next slide. All right, let's check it out. Factory of Willow Run. Here we are building ships in Stockton. There we are building all these Liberty ships. There's Rosie the Riveter kind of girls. Yeah, join it now. Be a star-spangled lady. And Rosie the Riveter, women can do it. Women, we need you to work. We need your help. We can't fight the Nazis alone. All right, and so those Liberty ships that used to take us 365 days, we built them in 1 week. And those bombers that used to take a month, we were building one bomber every hour. And that was just at one factory. So we are just churning out war material like you couldn't believe. America is the super factory of the world. And America produced more than all the Axis countries combined in 1942. And by the year 1944, we produced 5 times as much as all the Axis countries combined. So we're just outbuilding our enemies. And, okay, yeah, they shoot down one of our planes. Well, we've got 7 more coming, way faster than they can replace their own. So America's just setting us up to win this war. Okay, and the American propaganda machine. Dr. Seuss, Walt Disney, Stan Lee, all of them get employed to show how evil the Axis are. So let's check some of these out. So here's one of these original Superman comics showing Superman beating up Hirohito and Hitler. Here's Dr. Seuss telling people to stop being racist. We got to all work together to fight fascism. Here's kind of a racist one saying that fascism is like fighting us. Here's Captain America punching Hitler in the face. Also introducing his friend Bucky. So, yeah, good job, Captain America. Captain America #1 right there. That's awesome. Okay, and then, yeah, here's some of these racist ones where we're talking about how much we don't like Japanese. Let's have no half surrender. Make him raise his other hand. Okay, what are you going to do about it? 5,200 American prisoners killed by Japanese torture in the Philippines. Okay, fight back. All right, this is a funny Dr. Seuss one. Benito is naked. All he has is the book Mein Kampf. That's funny. But there really was a problem, though. Like, we took some of this propaganda in a negative way, and Americans started targeting Japanese people and Japanese Americans who wanted nothing to do with supporting Japan in the war. They wanted to support America in the war. They were really mistreated by many Americans. Okay, and then here's a cartoon. I think I show this in the class. It's Donald Duck fighting Hitler. Yeah, this is water conservation. There's more of these Tokyo Kid ones. And then Mickey Mouse, reminder, keep awake. Remember Pearl Harbor. And then what have you done today to save your country from these bad guys? And I'll skip that one too. Okay, and another thing I want to say is thanks, Mexico. Okay, as soon as America joined the war, you declared war on both Japan and Germany, and you helped us out even though you only had a few soldiers. America asked Mexico to send workers to work in the United States. We needed everybody we could to work in our farms, to work in our factories, so we were actively recruiting people from Mexico to assist our war economy, and we couldn't have won the war without their assistance as well. So Mexican workers wanted in October. That's great. And then U.S. Department of Agriculture, we need more farm workers. Food is wasting. Earn good money. Join the Farm Labor Office. So here's Mexican people working in the United States. And this will kind of set up some immigration trends in America's future. And here's kind of a version of the Mexican flag ripping up the Nazi flag. Awesome. Okay, so the turning point for our war with Japan happened pretty close to the same time as the Battle of Stalingrad, actually. This is June 6, 1942, the Battle of Midway. The surviving American fleet was only about half the size of the Japanese fleet, so we were outnumbered terribly. And the Japanese decide to invade this tiny island of Midway that was occupied by American soldiers. Well, the American fleet decided to take a risk and they said, even though we're outnumbered, we're going to fight back. And so America launched our planes against the Japanese fleet. This time we caught the Japanese fleet off guard, and we destroyed 4 out of their 5 aircraft carriers. Oh, actually, here I wrote we destroyed all their aircraft carriers. But we especially destroyed the Akagi, that large super ship that attacked us. And after this battle, the Japanese would never win another major battle. Okay, and with all the war material we're producing, the Japanese will never be able to catch up with us, and we will just overwhelm them to the point where they're going to lose the war. So let's check it out. Here we are blowing up some of those Japanese carrier ships. I think that's the Akagi on fire. Here we are blowing up their ships in another angle. And here's the Battle of Midway. By all accounts, it was just crazy amounts of ships and airplanes battling it out over the skies of the Pacific. All right, and I'll save this for the next time. Peace out.